I found surprised me. Like that. And look at me. Like if I ran out of songs and then I'm like, all right, here's the next song, and I just started playing that, would anyone throw tomatoes? Not necessarily, right? Like you wouldn't necessarily throw tomatoes at something like that. I mean, maybe you would, but hello everyone. You are watching the Beats Save the World YouTube channel. Today, I want to talk about speed songwriting and how it compares to normal, more orchestrated songwriting. So speed songwriting versus more, I guess, what would you call that? Songwriting where you take longer? We need a good name for this. Speed songwriting. Okay, we'll just go with speed songwriting versus normal songwriting, all right? What brought this to kind of my attention and what really made me start thinking about it was there's this story about Ray Charles. Now, Ray Charles is this really awesome, famous soul musician, and he has this song called What I Say, and it sounds kind of like, you know, hey, mom, wanna keep me alone? Yeah, I should love you, daddy, all night long, oh yeah. Something like that, okay? This really famous song that people often say is like one of the greatest songs of all time, right? What's interesting about that song is that apparently it was written during a performance. So apparently Ray Charles, and you can see this this was part of a biographical pic about Ray Charles, the movie Ray, okay? And there's a scene in this movie that's kind of describing what apparently happened in real life, which is where Ray Charles had played all the material that he knew, and then apparently he was leaving the stage, but someone told him that he still had to be on stage for a bit longer. So, like, some stories have said that he kind of wrote a new song on break, like in the dressing room. Other people, like in the movie, it looks like he kind of wrote it right when he was on stage, okay? But today I want to kind of explain, why is that possible? Like, how can you write an awesome song really quickly, whereas other songs, like, you know, you spend days or months writing it? I think that there really is a specific technique that's good to practice, and I would call it speed songwriting. It's where you give yourself a strict time limit, and then you see what is the best song you can come up with within that limit. Like with Ray Charles, like when he was either writing it on the break or some would say even during the performance. So let me explain kind of some tips for like how do you write a song really fast that sounds decent, okay? Tip number one is I'd say that speed songwriting is way more riff-based than melody-based, okay? What do I mean by that? Some of my favorite ways to write songs involve starting with like a melody, like a vocal melody. Like let's say I'm writing about going on a walk, and I was like, I'm on a walk today, and then I try harmonizing that melody. So kind of my favorite way to write songs if I'm not under time limit is you start with a melody, and then you find chords that work really well for that melody. That approach doesn't work as well with speed songwriting because you spend too much time auditioning chords. Like you spend too much time like figuring out, okay, what chord works with that. You don't have this same flow of just playing something and then there we go, like, and just going on with it. So in my opinion, if you're doing a speed songwriting session where you're trying to come up with something as fast as possible, instead of starting with like a melody and then harmonizing it, you really want to start with the kind of what the instrumental sounds like. So like a chord progression, and then build melodies on top of that. So riff and chord based instead of melody based. Like you're starting with kind of the instrumental and what chords you want, and then you kind of improvise melodies on top of that. This is kind of more the jam session approach, because like if you're in a jam session with people and you're like, let's just start playing something, it's very similar. Like you would start with a chord progression that's fairly, you know, standard. Like let's say the 1 5 6 4, you know, you might go like something like that, right? Because it's something easy to start with, and then you just improvise melodies on top. Honestly, like if you had to write a song in the course of a performance, I would say just treat it like a jam session. Like just, sure, let's start with, let me do it right here. I'm not some genius speed songwriter, but I'll do something maybe somewhat listenable. Let's start with that chord progression. I walked outside today. What I found surprised me. Like that. And look at me. Like if I ran out of songs and then I'm like, all right, here's the next song, and I just started playing that, would anyone throw tomatoes? Not necessarily, right? Like you wouldn't necessarily throw tomatoes at something like that. I mean, maybe you would, but the point is, if you start kind of with like a common chord progression and then just riff on top of that, you can get some cool results very fast. And in my opinion, that's what Ray Charles did, because that song, what I say, it's really just a 1-4-5, right? The common blues progression. It's like let's see. It's like that. It's a 1, 4, 5. So it's really just starting with a common tried and true chord progression and then improvising on top of that. So like Ray Charles, he in the video, in the biographical picture, he started kind of playing that riff like the and then he probably just improvised a melody. And what's interesting is that when he starts, he kind of just plays the chord and then stops. And I think the reason, so like at the start of the song, it's like, hey mama, wanna, whatever the lyrics are. I don't know the song that well. So he plays a chord and then he just does the melody. And I think one reason he would do that is because he wouldn't have to focus on synchronizing while he's coming up with the melody, right? So if he's coming up with the melody on the spot, let's say he really were writing it during that performance, he could just play the chord and then just think, okay, what's the melody, without having to worry about synchronizing it. And then later on in the song, once he has kind of the melody established, then he synchronized it. Then he was playing while he was singing, which is very impressive. I have trouble kind of singing while playing that kind of riff. If I worked it out, I could, but of course that's a next level of talent for Ray Charles. So far we've said, like, do it more riff-based, start with maybe a common chord progression, and then honestly just like put stuff on top of it. Like, just what do you hear? Like, when you hear those chord progressions, does any idea come to you? Like, just listen to that musical voice inside your head, and then you too can do some speed songwriting. So honestly, one of the most practical pieces of advice that I can give you for practicing the skill is just learn some chord progressions that are in a lot of songs, because like those are some tried and true ones. So here, just to start off with, some cool chord progressions that you can pull out whenever you need to speed songwrite. Remember, there's the 1-5-6-4. That's the common pop music progression, like 1, 5, 6, 4. And what I mean by 1, 5, 6, 4 when I'm saying these numbers, it's like choose a key. So G major, pretty common key. And then 1 would be the note G. And then the 5 is the 5th note of the G major scale. Okay, so when I'm saying 1, 5, 6, 4, it's first note of the scale, 5th note of the scale, 6th note of the scale, 4th note of the scale. And if you're wondering how do you turn a note into a chord, well, you take that scale and then you take every second note, okay? So if you're in the G major scale, in the key of G major, and you're starting with the note G, to turn that into a chord, just take every second note in the G major scale. So like in the G major scale here, 1, 3, 5, just every second note. And that's how you can turn a note into a chord. Just find what key you're in, find the scale, and take every second note. That's how you turn a note into a chord. Another chord progression that you can use, of course, is the 1-4-5, which is what Ray Charles used. That's like the blues chord progression, right? Especially if you're doing a 1-4-5, you may want to consider using the chords. So a 1 dominant 7, 4 dominant 7, 5 dominant 7. So all dominant 7 chords. That gives you that really bluesy song, that really bluesy sound when you play a 1-4-5 chord progression with all dominant 7 chords. Another chord progression, if you want to be inspired by doo-wop, like the sound of songs like Stand By Me, I guess. So the doo-wop chord progression is 1, 6, 2, 5. So let's see. So like let's see, what's the 6? Okay, so like this. 1, 6, 2, 5 would be like this. So that's another cool chord progression you can use. Let's see, any others? 2-5-1 can be pretty good. That's like more of a jazzy sounding, especially so if you use like the 7. So if you build a chord with 4 notes using the root, 3rd, 5th, and then the 7th, and then you play a 2-5-1, that'll sound pretty jazzy. So a 2-5-1 in the key of G major would be something like. That can be cool if you want a more jazzy sounding jam. So that should be pretty helpful as far as an approach of how you can speed songwrite. I think it's a great thing to practice. I think the more you do this, like, you should also work on some more long form extended songwriting, like where you're taking more time to think of the ideas. But I think it really is good to throw in a speed songwriting session once in a while. I think it just helps you think on your feet. And I think it can improve your sense of melody, your ability to write a line on top of chords. And it's just good to practice once in a while. So consider putting it into your routine. It's just something really interesting that we can take from the inspiration of Ray Charles. I hope this was helpful. Let me know what you thought. All comments help the algorithm. Maybe give it a thumbs up. And thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you next time. See you.